Hello, this is Grady Hughes. I'm doing an update on the Hart family case. Earlier today I was reading an article on the Oregonian Live, or I guess it's actually OregonLive.com. The Oregonian's the newspaper. But it was a crazy article that was out. Hart family crash. Alarming details revealed in 2013 Oregon child welfare records. And apparently the Oregonian did repeated requests to get the sealed information, and through the Freedom of Information Act, they were able to get the documents. Of course, the names of the CPS agents were redacted. All right. And you can see right here, here's the entire Hart family. It looks like in 2013. See how skinny they all are? It's crazy. 5 of Jennifer and Sarah Hart's 6 children were so small in 2013 that their weight and heights were not listed on growth charts for children their age. Child Welfare Records released Monday's show. Yet Oregon's Child Protective Agency determined there was no conclusive evidence of abuse or neglect in their Westland home and closed its investigation into the family after 5 months. So they determined there was no conclusive evidence, even though all 6 kids were so skinny and so small they didn't even register on any charts. How does that make any sense? Isn't that the evidence you needed right there? The doctor who measured the children reported no causes for concern despite the children's sizes, because she didn't have records of their previous weights. Her opinion weighed heavily in the Department of Human Services decision. At least 2 women who knew the family told caseworkers they witnessed the Harts withholding food and harshly punishing the children, and a Minnesota official who investigated the family said the mothers knew how to blame frequent red flags on their adopted children. And that's exactly what I said in one of the videos, how they always throw their children under the bus and blame the parents of them, and how they actually came to them being, addicted to drugs and so forth. It was completely bogus. Most parents try to defend their children. The Hart parents actually threw their kids under the bus any chance they could get to protect their own asses, okay? The details were among many new revelations in 42 pages of records released after a successful public records appeal by the Oregonian, Oregon Live, and other news organizations. Authorities believe Jen Hart drove the family SUV off of a California cliff last month, killing all inside it. The family embarked on the trip shortly after Washington officials visited their Woodland home to investigate a child welfare complaint. When Oregon welfare workers checked on the family in 2013, the kids were ages 8 to 15. The investigation, opened in July of that year, was closed in December. The conclusion was that there were signs, but not definitive evidence of abuse or neglect, and therefore no consequences or conditions for the parents. And I guarantee it, this was sort of a political, okay, yeah, they're kind of my kind of people, so, I'm not going to punish them. All right? If these were 2 Republican parents, you can guarantee that they would have been investigated and had their kids taken from them. State officials said caseworkers have received training since then to do a better job making decisions about the safety of children who are extremely isolated from adults outside the family, like the Hart children. Jeez. Now they're trying to cover their asses. Oh yeah, we started doing more training since then. Well, that's bogus right there. Listen to this. State officials said caseworkers have received training since then to do a better job making decisions. Well, what does that mean actually? So does that mean they realized that they made a mistake back then and started doing better training? Because if that's true, why didn't they take them out of the family? Or are they just saying that to make it seem like they did something? This doesn't make any sense, right? Because had they changed their training because they observed something, they realized something was wrong back then they would have taken the children. I can see them now implementing that. Or it might just be a cleverly worded sentence, the way they worded that, because, yes, even if it was yesterday, it's since then. Officials blacked out the names of the child welfare workers and the doctors involved in the case. The state did not provide any record showing that the supervisor signed off on the decision or why. The section of the case report that shows who approved the decision is blank. Minnesota child welfare records show that a social worker said that 4 years after the couple adopted their middle daughter, Abigail, the 6-year-old, was the size of a 2-year-old. Her school called child welfare authorities after she was seen going through garbage and taking food. Records indicate school officials stopped telling the Hart parents when their children took food at school so that the children would not be punished. How sad is that? So what they're saying here is that they realized that the children were being punished at home when they were taking food out of garbage cans to eat because they were so hungry. So not only were the kids so hungry they needed to take food out of the garbage cans, they were punished at home for doing so. How disgusting is that? What kind of parents are these? The Oregon doctor said she would follow up with the family during subsequent visits, the records indicate. All of the children denied that they had been abused, the worker wrote. Well, of course, that's how they were coached. All gave nearly identical accounts. None except the middle son, Devontae Hart, showed any emotion, however, the worker wrote. All of the children said that if they got into trouble, their parents disciplined them by requiring them to meditate for 5 minutes. See, when you read that, you go, oh, well, God, what's wrong with that? Yeah, they were all coached to say that. One person who alerted authorities said that while the family was staying in the home, the group ordered pizza and each child was only allowed one small piece. The next morning, the pizza was gone. The woman told authorities Jen Hart became enraged and took all the children into the bathroom. Wow, so we actually finally have a witness that was in the house. When they emerged, Jen Hart said none of them would be eating breakfast because no one would admit he or she had eaten the pizza, the woman reported. All of the children then had to lie on a bed for 4 to 5 hours. They had to wear sleeping masks on their faces and lie with their arms at their sides, the woman said. Are you kidding me? So they had to put those little masks over their eyes and lay on the bed for 4 or 5 hours? This sounds like a torture chamber. The children responded to questions by looking to Jen Hart for permission to talk, the woman said. They also appeared lethargic in person, unlike the animated children shown in photos shared on social media. See, that's exactly what we've been saying the whole time, that it was just all an outward facade to make people believe they were just some really hip, utopian family. Totally bogus. Another woman interviewed as part of the investigation said Jen Hart had reacted defensively when asked her why she only gave the children tiny amounts of food and kept them away from people outside the family. The woman said Jen Hart told her that Hannah Hart, the oldest daughter, who had been noted to be very small and lacking front teeth, was morbidly obese at the time of her adoption. Jen Hart said the girl now was so much better, the woman reported. A photograph of Hannah Hart and her 2 biological siblings at the time they were adopted shows a slender, normal-weight 4-year-old girl with all of her teeth. And I actually think that this right here is Hannah, which is unbelievable because she's so much taller than the other sibling, but now she's shorter than all of them, like she was stunted. Let's see. Let me just see if I can get a picture here real quick. See, that girl right there is Hannah. See that? Right there. So Hannah is really tall right there, and I'm wondering if this is maybe Abigail right there. Can you believe that? I mean, Hannah was completely stunted in growth. Unbelievable. 2 women that Oregon caseworkers spoke to described Hannah and her biological brother Marcus, the oldest of the Hart children, as the particular targets of Jen Hart's abuse. One of the women said that Jen Hart told her that Marcus tried to kill her once, but that Devante saved her. She witnessed Marcus make a benign comment. In response, Jen Hart made him lie on the floor in a dark room for 7 hours as punishment. Another time, on Marcus's July 1st birthday, he got in trouble so no one could tell him happy birthday, the woman told Oregon caseworkers. Oregon caseworkers are supposed to interview each child who is alleged to have been abused or neglected, then other important adults in their lives before interviewing the adults who are alleged to have abused them. Instead, separate caseworkers interviewed the children and their parents at the same time during the same visit. Man, that's just absolutely terrible. So you think the kids are going to tell the truth when you have this absolutely mean parent, the one that abused them sitting right in front of them, the one that makes them say rehearsed things over and over? Man, this is ridiculous. When Jen and Sarah Hart were interviewed, they told caseworkers they had been targeted in the past because they were vegetarian lesbians who adopted high-risk children while living in a small Midwestern town. They moved to Oregon to better fit in, they said. The children came to them with food issues, of course. That'll explain everything that you're doing, the abuse and how they're malnourished. It's the food issues. The children came to them with food issues, they said. Jen Hart said she disciplined her children by talking to them, redirecting them, and having them meditate. The report says Jen Hart was adamant that many of the family's issues stem from others not understanding her family's alternative lifestyle. Jen Hart reported that many of the children had medical issues upon adoption, and she described her youngest son, Jeremiah, as globally delayed at the time of adoption. Whatever the hell that means. The couple said Jeremiah could not even use a fork when he came to them, but was functioning normally now. Jen Hart described Devante as very violent and a victim of abuse in his birth mother's home. He was diagnosed with a mood disorder and ADHD, Jen Hart told caseworkers. But he no longer took medication for those conditions because the Hart parents did not believe those diagnoses, Jen Hart said. Although Jen Hart said publicly that Devante was shot at during his early childhood, she told the caseworker that he had a gun held to his head. Yeah, probably Jen. The Hart parents described Devante as thriving in their home. It was 14 months before a photograph of a tearful Devante hugging a white police officer would gain worldwide notice. But Jen Hart told caseworkers the boy was already famous nationwide for his free hugs. Jen Hart also told them she earned a degree in education. In fact, she dropped out of Northern State University in South Dakota without earning a degree. See, she just lies through life. Just a joke. Oregon child welfare workers received their first complaint about the Hart family on July 18, 2013. They went to the home the next day, but no one came to the door. Wow, does that sound familiar? Even though 2 vehicles with Minnesota license plate were in the driveway. Sarah Hart called them on July 22nd, but said Jen Hart and the children were traveling. Oregon caseworkers were not able to meet the Hart children and parents until 5 weeks after the initial report. The children were seen by the doctor in late October or early November. Caseworkers spoke with the doctor on December 3rd and told Sarah Hart on December 26th that the investigation had been concluded. It was Abigail Hart's 10th birthday. So you kind of look at that and you think maybe the 5 weeks that they waited were to cover up bruises that they had left on the children. The worker told Sarah Hart the agency's conclusion was that it was unable to determine whether or not abuse or neglect had occurred, and that it recommended regular medical checkups to monitor the children's heights and weights. Sarah Hart contacted the caseworker in June 2014 to say that the family was following Department of Human Services recommendations and having the children seen by a doctor again for a checkup. During the investigation, the Harts had told caseworkers they believe in naturopathic medicine and would only take the children to a doctor for serious issues. Earlier, Minnesota child welfare investigators had fielded at least 6 reports that one or more of the Hart children had been neglected or abused. An Oregon child welfare worker called a caseworker in Minnesota to ask about the Hart children's adoption and background. She wrote that the Minnesota worker told her that Texas carried out adoptions, even when the Children's Welfare Office had not supported the placement. The Minnesota worker said that the problem with Jen and Sarah Hart was that they appear normal and can talk convincingly about the children having high needs and mental health issues related to food, both stemming back to their early lives before adoption. Yeah, so I think that's what happened to the neighbor, that the Harts were able to sell the story to them, and that's why they didn't make that complaint the first time in August 2017. Without any regular or consistent academic or medical oversight, these children risk falling through the cracks, the Oregon worker wrote in her report. One of the women whose caseworkers spoke to about the Harts publicly stepped forward after the crash. Alexandra Aragopoulos has since started a petition calling on Congress to create a national registry of child welfare reports. State officials said in a statement that they believe the Hart case highlights the need for such a clearinghouse to avoid future tragedies. I think I agree with that. Oregon workers were aware of 6 reports about the Hart family to Minnesota Child Welfare Agency during a 3-month period from November 2010 through January 2011. All of the reports were tied to Hannah or Abigail Hart, biological siblings who were adopted in 2006. Abuse was found to be substantiated in 2 of the 6 investigations. But Oregon workers did not learn of a 2008 investigation into allegations Jen Hart injured Hannah. Oregon workers also did not learn that Sarah Hart had pleaded guilty to criminal abuse of Abigail until September 24, 2013, 2 months after the investigation began. In that case, Abigail told investigators her mother had hit her because she had a penny that she claimed she had found, but her mothers thought she had stolen it and that she was lying. Jesus. That's just ridiculous. A penny. Ooh. Jesus. That was the only documented incident that resulted in consequences for either Hart parent. Sarah and Jennifer Hart were required to undergo in-home counseling and therapy, and the couple agreed to no longer physically discipline their children. The final Minnesota child welfare report that Oregon officials learned about took place in January 2011. Hannah told a nurse she had not eaten all day. She said Jen Hart had shoved a banana and nuts in her mouth for being disrespectful. When the nurse asked Sarah Hart about what happened, Sarah Hart said, "She's playing the food card. Just give her water," the nurse told child welfare worker. Yeah, that's just so disgusting. And you notice that's bananas. That's what she bought when she was down in Fort Bragg. How disgusting is that? All right, so that's the new information that came out on the Hart case. And I just wanted to let you know, this picture right here is from 2013. Do any of these children here look well-nourished whatsoever? This is an absolute travesty here, okay? So, man, it's just absolutely disturbing. So that's all I got for you this time, and until next time, be safe out there.